You're not alone. If you need someone to talk to today, please contact Crisis Services Canada by either calling them at 1-833-456-4566 all hours of the day. Or you can text them at 45645 at 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, you're not alone, and Crisis Services Canada is here to help.
The FHN network is sponsored in part by Hoddle Services. If you're looking for a disc jockey, karaoke host, video jockey to videographer, our company can help. With over 20 years of experience, we would be happy to help with your special event within Ontario, Canada. You can contact us at 226-988-2895 or visit us at our website at hoddleservices.vpweb.ca. That's HODDLE Services. We look forward to hearing from you and helping with your special event.
Yes, that's right. It's Locking Up Sportstalk. My name is Logan Lockhart here on the Fine Subtle Network and on ASTV. It's our third time on ASTV. The first time it was some NHL trade deadline talk of Chris Faria. Last week it was Nolan Kangas with some NFL draft talk, which is Thursday, the NFL draft from Cleveland. What I'm hearing is that it's going to kind of be back to normal here. So last year, you had a real wacky kind of wild draft. It was the first time that us as observers of sports got to see how things are done in a pandemic. And now, well, we're kind of used to it. Back to normal, I'm hearing. You're going to have people there, a lot of people. The last time the NFL draft was normal, quote unquote, was in Nashville in 2019. And it was wild. If you remember, the people in the streets, I mean, it was something else. NFL draft this Thursday. Check out the show on ASTV and the Fine Subtle Network YouTube page, Fine Lock It Up Sports Talk. Right there, you can get it, all your draft preview. And the week before that, of course, NHL stuff. I'm going to start with the NHL myself, as I am with you here on Lock It Up Sports Talk for the next 25 minutes or so. And here's the thing. At the beginning of the year, it was all about, do we like this divisional format with just playing games within your division? And then the baseball series style, something about that. And the reception was positive. For the most part, it almost appeared as though this is something that people would push for to be permanent. As we sit here now with only about 8 games, 9 games, 10 games left, depending on which team you are, I would be real curious to see if that opinion has changed. If people still are really on board with the whole idea to have a lot of divisional games. I like a lot of divisional games, but I'll give you my opinion here. I think now at this point of the season, people are just ready for the playoffs. You know, and I mean, these matchups now, we've seen them a million times. It's kind of getting a little dry. And it's playoff time. And I know that the playoffs, it's going to be the same matchups too, because it's within your division, but at least it's going to have a little something different on the line. Right now, at this point of the season, you can kind of get the sense it's getting a little stale. And I think that's just the product of the schedule this year. It's the nature of what it is. I like a lot of divisional matchups. I hope the NHL, and this is just my opinion, I hope the NHL does a hybrid. I want to see more divisional matchups than there would be in a normal season. But at the same time, I don't want every single matchup to be a divisional matchup. Of course, this year had to be done differently. But I want a hybrid of that. For example, the Toronto Maple Leafs. I would love if the Toronto Maple Leafs played Montreal 8 times a year in a normal year, or Ottawa, Buffalo, right? Go back to the Northeast days just about 15 years ago. That's how it was, right? They'd play Boston 8 times a year. They'd play Montreal 8 times a year. And then you'd play teams outside of your division, but in the conference, like Washington or Pittsburgh, you'd play them 4 times a year. And you wouldn't see every single Western Conference team, which is something that I'm not a big fan of. And I understand the NHL that's going to be there, I think, forever, though, because they want every player to be in every arena, right? Every team has to go in at least everyone's arena, at least once. So the thinking behind that was Connor McDavid will be seen in every arena. I'm personally not a big fan of it. I like to develop rivalries and develop matchups. And with the normal format, that's apparently what they tried to do. It's not hitting the mark. So there needs to be a bit of a hybrid. And I think this year, it was a good experimental year for all this. But at the end of the day, there's still adjustments that have to happen for us to get back to that normal calendar, but also something that everyone likes. So that's the schedule there. Now, diving into the schedule, you saw Vancouver beat Toronto after coming back from the big COVID outbreak. They beat Toronto twice. It was a big shock in the hockey world. And now we're looking at Vancouver and we're saying, hold on for a second. Montreal's kind of struggling. There's a path for Vancouver to make a last-minute playoff push because the majority of their games down the stretch were against Ottawa. And all due respect to Ottawa, but if there's a team that you want to play to make a last-minute playoff push, it's Ottawa. And Vancouver had that. Now, big disappointment from Vancouver. Yesterday, they lose to Ottawa. So it's kind of looking a little dicey for the Canucks here. They're still kind of in the mix. They're 10 points back on Montreal. Of course, they've missed so many games. So they're going to have a lot of games to be made up for. Montreal now kind of getting it together. That was a big win last night. They beat Calgary. And with Montreal, this is why I'm saying I'm ready for the playoffs. Because with Montreal, it's just looking like they're going to be the 4th seed. Winnipeg or Edmonton, they're going to kind of fight it out for the 2 seed. And then there's number 1 seed, which looks like Toronto, especially now Toronto, after beating up on Winnipeg a little bit. The thing about the number 2 seed is this, and this is where Edmonton and Winnipeg come in. I don't know what the number 2 seed means. I mean, who cares if you get the number 2 seed? You're going to play the 3 seed in the playoffs. So I can just lock it up right now. It's Edmonton and Winnipeg in the playoffs, and who cares who's home ice? Because, quite frankly, I don't know how much of a difference it would make. There's no fans, number one. Second of all, these teams, they've played in everyone's arena so many times this year. There's a level of comfortability here. So I don't know what the big fuss is about a number 2 seed. I think, if anything, Winnipeg had an opportunity this past week to really scare Toronto a little bit for the number 1 seed, and they couldn't get it done. So now we're in a situation where it's looking like a Toronto-Montreal playoff series. How about that? Hasn't happened in a very long time. And an Edmonton-Winnipeg playoff series, which is really the tough matchup. I mean, neither team wants that matchup, right? Edmonton does not want to play Winnipeg and vice versa. And when it comes to Toronto, you needed to really lock in that number 1 seed. It's looking pretty good for Toronto right now. It's not a lock quite yet. 7 points up on Edmonton as we speak. But still, if we're going to get a Toronto-Montreal playoff series, I mean, who's not saying sign me up right now? I'm saying sign me up, because it's something that a lot of people and a lot of these fans, they haven't seen ever. So think about it from that perspective. Now, as we go through the rest of the NHL here, and you look at the West Division is real intriguing because it's the only division right now where you have 3 playoff teams that have clinched. I mean, think about that for a second. I mean, the Leafs, they haven't even clinched the playoff spot. So look at the West. What's going on in the West? You have Vegas, Colorado, and Minnesota. Surprise team in Minnesota. But those 3 teams have clinched. And this West Division right now is kind of looking like the North, with what's going on in Canada. Because Vegas appears to be the team that is going to be like the Leafs, in this scenario, right? They're the team that's number one. And then you got Colorado and Minnesota. Now, Minnesota, they're not going to be too thrilled about playing Colorado because Colorado's clicking right now. They've lost 2 in a row, but they're clicking. Minnesota's the team, though, that is real hot right now. And you got to be thinking, hey, are we going to get a bad matchup here? Are we getting unlucky with the matchups? And I'm just looking ahead to the playoffs. That's what I'm doing. The interesting thing about the NHL this year is that a lot of the playoff races will be decided on the ice on that day between those two teams because it's all divisional games, right? So unlike other years where there would be a lot of scoreboard watching, right? You would have to really do work. You know, if you're a fan of a team and your team is a couple points out of a playoff spot in a normal year, you'd have to do a lot of work on that night to scoreboard watch and figure out what's going on around the league. You know, with this year, there's a pretty good chance you might actually be playing the team you're chasing or playing the team that's right behind you. That's just the nature of the schedule. Interesting schedule. It's how it's going this year. Now, St. Louis has really crawled themselves back into a playoff spot. And I was talking weeks ago about how they may be in the mix for Taylor Hall. They decided that wasn't the right thing to do. And now they've won 2 in a row. And Arizona, they're the team who's kind of fallen behind here because St. Louis, they have 3 games in hand on Arizona. Arizona's 1 point back of St. Louis. So it's not looking too good for the Coyotes right now. And as we go to the Central, and this has kind of been the division that everyone's interested in at the top. And again, if you're only focused on Canadian hockey this year, I think this is good to kind of go around the league here and see what's going on. But, you know, Carolina, Florida, and Tampa, those are all elite teams this season. Okay, that's how good those 3 teams have been. And I don't know if the rest of the league is aware quite yet of how good a team like Florida has been this year. They've been real good. Now, the thing about Carolina is that we've seen them make runs for the last few years. They're kind of in the mix, and no one really trusts that they can go all the way. This might be their year to make a statement. The problem is the nature of this season and this format of scheduling might hurt these teams because they got to go through each other to make a run, right? It's going to help maybe a team like Toronto, who's just got to go through Canada to make a run. This is clearly the year for the Maple Leafs, if there is a year, right? I know that there's a lot of people who say that a lot, but I'm looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs. The window is right now. If you're not making a deep cup run this year, I don't know what to tell you because the opportunity's there. You got to go through, let's say, Montreal in the first round, which you would take in any year if you're the Leafs. No disrespect to Montreal, but if you're looking at playoff matchups, let me just tell you, in Leafland, if it's not Boston, they're happy. So you get Montreal in the first round, and then you got to go through Edmonton or Winnipeg, teams that you have had decent success against in recent years, right? I mean, forget this season now. I'm talking about a playoff series, and this is what we're going to see. It's about what we've seen in the past, and I like Toronto's chances, you know, and it would be a massive disappointment if Toronto didn't make a deep run. They got to go to the conference finals this year. I think that is the minimum. Usually for the Leafs, it's been, okay, win a playoff series, get by the first round. I think it's different this year. The window is right now, at the very least, it's the conference finals. And then you deal with whoever you got to deal with. It might be Tampa Bay. It could be Florida. It could be Carolina. It could be Pittsburgh, who's number 1 in their division. Everyone kind of sleeping on Pittsburgh a little bit because they're getting older, quote unquote. Pittsburgh's going to make one last run themselves. But for Toronto, minimum, conference finals, lock it up. That's why the show's called Lock It Up. That's something you got to lock up. The window's right now, ladies and gentlemen. It just is. With the Toronto Maple Leafs, you've had playoff disappointments. You've had teams that probably should have won a couple of those series. Boston was a real good team, but that was how the scheduling worked then. Toronto got a pretty bad matchup the last few years with getting Boston. That's how it went in the Atlantic Division. This year, it's going to help Toronto, I think. And I think they're going to take matchups like this all day. So Toronto's, after just a brutal stretch, and it ended in Vancouver. The Leafs are looking a little better right now. Nick Foligno gets inserted into the lineup, and the Leafs, it's all-in mode, it's win-now mode, and that's how they're going to be. Now, before I move on to my picks of the night in every sport, quickly here, just with last word on Vancouver, and I was thinking about writing something about, if Vancouver was really going to make a push here, then this, a movie might be made about them, because they were in a spot where it just seemed like they may not even play, right? I mean, there was a real conversation about how they can't finish the season. And then they came out, they beat the number one team in the North Division, Toronto, twice in a row. And then you looked at the remaining of their schedule, and it's a lot of Ottawa. And there was a real belief that they could make the playoffs. And I was just thinking, a movie could have been made about that. But let me move on to Major League Baseball here, and I want to go over what we saw on the weekend, because the reason why I'm going to bring it up is that even if you don't watch baseball, you have to be aware of what's happening between the LA Dodgers and the San Diego Padres, because this is the rivalry right now of the generation. It's shaping up to be that way for the next few years. It's going to be LA, San Diego in the NL West, and they're going to go toe-to-toe. This is right now a series that people care about in the sport, something that we haven't seen in the regular season since Yankees-Red Sox in the early 2000s to this magnitude. That's why people should care. Because when you have 46, I did the math, 46 combined All-Star appearances between both teams. You have multiple MVP winners. You have multiple Cy Young winners. So these two teams have star power. They have intensity. They played the first 7 games against each other in the regular season like they're playoff games. They really did. And that says a lot. So what you saw in Sunday Night Baseball was a scenario of LA, San Diego. LA has a 7-1 lead, and San Diego storms back, and they win the game. That's just how it is. Extra innings. There's a quick note on Major League Baseball. There's an independent league that is adopting, and I believe it's called the Pioneer League. They are not directly affiliated with Major League Baseball, but it is an independent league, and I guess you can make the claim that they almost are. But instead of extra innings, they are now going to have a home run derby. Now, this is concerning on many levels, obviously, because you hear all the time, they're experimenting with rules in the minor leagues, this and that. Right now, actually, in the minors, the mound is 61 feet, not 60. They're experimenting with that to give hitters more time to react to the pitch. But in this independent league, there's no extra innings. It's just a home run derby, and you pick a player. Now, very, very scary, right? But I wouldn't get too worked up about it, because, again, just because something's happening in another league doesn't mean that it's going to come to Major League Baseball. I really hope that Major League Baseball, and this is just my opinion, I hope they never consider that. Not even as something, I hope they don't even have a conversation about it. They don't even know about it. Let's just put it that way. Because I can easily see Major League Baseball kind of making the point of, hey, this would be a great way to bring new people into the game, and this would be real exciting to close out a game. Can't happen, because the shootout in hockey and this home run derby, this is worse than the shootout. But the shootout in hockey, that was cool for about a year or two, and then people just grew over it and didn't like it anymore. Home run derby to settle a game in extra innings absolutely cannot happen in in Major League Baseball at that level. That's the majors, and things like that just can't happen. So that was just a quick note about some of the rules that are happening. And there's a lot of different rules that are being experimented with, whether it's in the minors or in independent leagues. You have the bases, especially at first base, that are slightly larger than they would. And that is, I would assume, to lower the risk of injury, because we have seen injuries at first base when guys are running through the bag. Base is a little small. You can interfere with the position player, collide with him, or maybe twist your ankle, something like that. So there are rules that are being experimented with. And we already have seen the extra inning rule in Major League Baseball now with the runner starting on second base. Let's not forget that was experimented with in the minors before it came to Major League Baseball. So that's something that they said, okay, let's bring this to the pros. Major League Baseball, it's all pros. But the thing about all these rules is that I wouldn't get too crazy about them. And I think it's a little discouraging when you watch a baseball game and all you got to hear about is, well, they might do this and they might do that. And we got to change this. And the batting averages are too low. I think everything's going to level out. So let's just relax about it. Now, games of the day, picks of the night. Blue Jays back in action today. They get Max Scherzer for the Nationals. So good luck. And yeah, Scherzer's look good. All jokes aside, the thing about Scherzer is that, I think he's going to almost be like Verlander here. I think he's going to get better as time goes on, and that's a real positive from the Nationals' perspective. Speaking about great pitchers, how about Jacob deGrom, who is that are at a historical level, the ace for the Mets. But I am liking the Nationals to kind of bounce out of whatever they're in right now. They're dealing with a lot of injuries, but I like Scherzer on the mound today. In Dunedin, they play the Blue Jays. I'm going to go with the Nationals. That's my pick of the day. And I'm going to pick the Yankees here to bounce back. The Yankees had a tough loss against Baltimore yesterday, a controversial loss. And, Baltimore is usually a place where the Yankees look pretty good, but they've struggled there in the last 4 or 5 games that they've played there, dating back to last season. So I think the Yankees got to bounce out of whatever they're in right now. There's some guys who aren't hitting. Gleyber Torres, he needs to do better. Clint Frazier is batting in the 9-hole. He might not even be in the lineup at this rate as we move forward here. But I think the Yankees got to really start stringing some wins together at some point. One of the greatest cliches in sports comes from baseball, and it's early, right? But there comes a point where it's not early anymore, and you're too far behind. And I think the Yankees, this is the time, okay? You got to beat up on a team like Baltimore, and Baltimore's looked okay, but you got to take care of business. That's just what needs to happen for the Yankees. So I like the Nationals. I like the Yankees tonight. And I like the Braves to beat the Cubs again. And again, this is similar to what's going on with the Yankees. A team like the Braves, they got to bounce out of it and string some wins together. It's just how it's got to go. So those are my 3 picks of the day. It's in Major League Baseball. It's been a good season in Major League Baseball. Let's keep it going. That is all for me on Lock It Up, Sports Talk, Fines Huddle Network, ASTV. Next week, we're back with a guest. Make sure not to miss it. 1 o'clock Tuesdays, Eastern Time. We do it every week. Until next week, it's Logan Lockhart signing off.
Make sure to check out our past shows from previous weeks on our YouTube, Facebook, or Mixcloud channels. You can always catch up on podcasts while checking out our FHN Network channel on YouTube or Facebook. Or you can listen to an audio copy of our past shows on our Mixcloud channel at FHN_Network. The FHN Network, the future of entertainment.